Jen, how is little Elton doing? Do you call him Sir Elton?
So he at one point did have the nickname Duke of Worthing. And then that was before we got him. And ever since we've got him, the names have just gone down in standing. Like they're no longer Sir or Duke or Prince. They're just like Smelton and
Nice.
Spellbag, Stinker.
How long have you had him now?
It's like nearly probably 18 months.
Okay.
So yeah, he's still kind of a bit of a puppy, but
He's a
yeah,
baby.
he's actually at kind of a nice age because he's not super puppy anymore. That was actually
Mhm.
hard. Um, so yeah, we might try and do some kind of holiday with him later this year, take him, don't know, to a shepherd's hut or a cabin or something somewhere and see if he
Oh,
fits.
nice.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Will he behave? Are you worried?
No, it's fine. I think he will behave. But
Okay.
he does get a bit, he likes to bark. He's very
Mhm.
barky.
Well,
He
you
barks
did
a
name
lot.
him after a singer, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. But he does have a habit of doing it like mid meeting and things. And you're like, oh my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
But yeah, how are your cats doing?
Oh, they're doing great. Pancake and Sushi. Um, Sushi is very vocal as well. He loves to wake me up and insist on breakfast very early. But we're on a new system. They're now getting an automatic feeder for breakfast. So I think they're now just going to become obsessed with the automatic feeder and less obsessed with waking me up. That's the goal.
That is a good goal to have. Yeah, I think it would be
Still, still a little TBD on that.
right. I actually kind of miss the convenience of that with cats versus dogs.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
yeah. Um, but that's what you sign up to, I guess.
Yeah. At least your dog, slightly more affectionate than my cats who just stare at me from across the room.
He's massively needy. He won't like unattach at any point, which is also quite annoying.
Yeah.
He just barked at us all morning because he wanted the space heater on. And it's like, I don't know, it must be high 60s here, I guess 60s, yeah, like quite warm, like not kind of you need extra heating levels of cold.
He, he's
But I
quite
had to put it on,
spoiled.
basically boil myself so that the dog could sit next to this fan heat.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Getting a few people in the call now might give it another minute or two to see if anyone else
Okay,
is coming, and then we'll get started.
awesome.
Do you think you'd expand your cat empire then and have more?
Oh, there's there's always a cat roadmap. Um, right now, I believe in the distribution system for cats. So I believe I will be given a cat when I'm ready, a third cat when I'm ready.
Oh, that's a nice way to look at it. I like that.
Yes. Because I just know there's going to be some cat, maybe someone's moving away, or it just ends up, on my front lawn or something.
Right.
I
I
feel it in my near future.
like that way of looking at it.
Yeah. And she will also be a food name. I just have to think. I've got pancake, I've got sushi. What is the third genre of food that I'm
Yeah.
going to go for?
Yeah, you like food names. I like rock star names for pets,
That-
which is
That's
why
so funny.
I really want to get a girl dog and call it Dolly.
My God, that would be so
So
cute.
good.
Oh my God. I
So fun.
love that.
Okay, should we actually maybe get started a bit?
Yeah, yeah. Unless people want to join sort of a spin-off webinar about dog and cat names,
Yeah,
but
right. Um, okay, so Hello and welcome everyone who's joined us. I'm Jen, I'm Senior Director of Content here at Bowclips. I've been here about 5 years, building up all of our content partnerships and helping to align and curate all of our videos. Previous to that though, I was a teacher for nearly a decade, and I worked predominantly with students who had social, emotional and mental health problems, as well as quite complex special educational needs. Many of the students that I worked with in the past had either struggled with school historically or had been multiply excluded from mainstream schools. Some had been through the prison system in some form, and most had some kind of diagnosis, including things like autism, ADHD, severe dyslexia, or things like schizophrenia, bipolar, and attachment issues as well. And I'm also someone who has ADHD myself, so I was really interested in ways that I could help those students. Most of them struggled to relate to a lot of the institutional and highly regulated nature of school and being in the classroom, and they found a lot of the national curriculum here in the UK to be a little bit alien to some of their experiences, their own identities and communities, maybe even some of their values. And that really became quite a blocker for them to access some of the learning in the classroom. So when I joined Bowclips, I really joined because our founder, David, set up the company really hoping to tap into the potential that video had for learning after seeing his own son, who struggled with dyslexia, lean into YouTube and TV documentaries to help teach himself the topics that he was learning right the way through high school. And that's something that I am really passionate about, something I used all the time as a teacher. And I really believe that video has the potential to stimulate so much imagination, creativity, and empathy through all of that real world immersion, visual explanations, and all of those relatable and much more inclusive teaching moments that you can get from using video. So I'm really thrilled today to be able to have this conversation with my fantastic colleague, Natalie, who is equally passionate about all things accessibility and inclusivity. And I know that she's going to be sharing some really great ideas with you about how you can really maximize how video is used in these spaces to improve learning for all students that are sort of, trying to tap into new subjects, new topics. I'll let her introduce herself, but I'll add that we are going to be doing a Q&A section at the end of this. So please do share your thoughts in the chat, any questions that you have, and we'll bring them up at the end. Thanks. Natalie.
Amazing. Thanks, Jen. What a wonderful background. It's always so great to hear about your very, very interesting background. I began my career in the nonprofit space in Boston, where I worked with underserved communities, helping them get into and graduate from college. So a lot of English language learners, a lot of DACA recipients, students who'd recently immigrated, perhaps were refugees as well. I did a lot of tutoring and teaching at that time. And then over the past couple of years, I've been working in the education technology industry because it's been such a great way to sort of scale up how I help students. For the past 3 years, I've been at Bowclips as the head of customer success. And for those of you not in the tech industry, I'm sure you love all of our jargons, but customer success basically just means I work with our customers. I work with them across the board. A lot of our customers are textbook publishers. Many are other education technology organizations that you all may use, such as Nearpod, Newsela, etc. And I work with a lot of teachers. So it's been great to see how people use video within the classroom, maybe in digital textbooks, other apps that they're building across the world. And I'm excited to share you all some of the tips I've learned, best practices, etc., for how to use video. One other note just about me, in terms of accessibility, I'm legally blind. I have a visual impairment, so I am particularly interested in accessibility and have some cool thoughts to share with you once we get to that section as well. So feel free to drop any specific questions about accessibility. We may also have a sort of a spin-off, a deep dive into accessibility webinar at some point, if any of you are interested in that. Cool. Well, let's kick off. To begin our presentation around maximizing the impact of video, I first want to talk about why is video important in education? And I'm sure I don't have to tell a room full of people who work in education that students love videos. I think that's pretty evident by looking at a student who usually is in that moment watching a video on their phone. But I'll tell you all anyway. We know through studies and through anecdotal evidence that videos are extremely important for the digital native student, especially since the pandemic and since the rise of apps such as TikTok, Facebook Reels, etc., that have that sort of shorter, repetitive or endless scroll of videos rather. So we see in studies that 82% of teachers believe that students' demand for video is increasing. We also see that about 92% of teachers believe that student satisfaction is increased with video. I'm sure there's many, many reasons for this. One reason I suppose Jen actually brought this up to me, so I'll let her expand in just a moment, but I think video is such a great way to help students absorb material asynchronously because they're able to pause, rewind, slow speech, etc., and actually absorb material in a way that they might not be able to do in a standard live classroom. Jen, would you add anything to that?
Oh yeah, totally. I think this really came into its own with some of the students I was working with, their ability to concentrate might not be kind of there for super long periods of time, easily distracted, easily kind of, something else is going on in the classroom might get kind of pulled away. And so I think one of the great things about video is that you can keep coming back to it. It's the same point. You can rewind, you can rewatch, you can remind yourself, even if you're sort of, studying that topic for maybe a couple of weeks in a go, still trying to get some of the key learning out of it. And I think that really allows students to sometimes, even remember whole chunks of what was being said, or be able to review and see how, whole arguments are built over certain topics and certain explanations.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine that's really important in the population you worked with. Awesome. Thanks for that, Jen. So we all agree, video is important, but we all probably can acknowledge that not all video is created equal. There's a lot of video content out there these days, especially with AI. So I do just kind of want to go over some tips around how to make sure you are using the right kind of video. So I would say that there are three main things I would look for in video: shortness, length, duration, relevance, and then making sure they're distraction free. So we all know, again, students have a little bit of a shortened attention span these days. A lot of the apps such as TikTok do have the video limit length. So students are more accustomed to having shorter and shorter videos. What I would recommend is if you do have a longer video, of course these exist, especially when you're thinking about more complex topics, maybe you can cut the video into multiple parts. So for example, you might have a lesson about how to find volume in a shape. And maybe you split the video out into a couple parts, setting up your equation is one part, one clip of the video. Then you actually watch water being poured into a pyramid as sort of the second clip of the video. And then the third clip of the video is kind of pulling all the pieces together. That's a really great way to still have a longer video, but still not exhaust your students' attention span, so to speak. You also want to make sure your videos are relevant, making sure that, if it is a video about volume, for example, it's using your country's, metric system or whatever measurement system your country uses. Perhaps the accent should be right, the accent that your students are speaking. Maybe the English language level is around, where your students' Lexile level is, etc. And making sure, of course, if there are any specific curriculums that you all are using, that the video is referencing those curriculums, maybe those learning objectives you have to hit. And then lastly, when it comes to distractions, many videos online can have product placement or request to subscribe or recommended videos during the video or after. So trying to keep those to a minimum if possible, because students can be very easily distracted and you don't want to add anything additional that could be superfluous to your learning objective. So just a couple do's and don'ts. When you're selecting a video, I would ask yourself, what is the student getting out of the video that they're not getting without the video? That they're not getting by just reading out the transcript or whatever you were planning to write out in your lesson before you decided to choose a video. One pitfall I see a lot of folks kind of falling into is they might choose a video almost for the sake of having a video, but it doesn't really add that much. So they might have a video where someone, even themselves, maybe they're just recording themselves, is basically just reading out the text in sort of a monotone, and it's not really adding much to the learning objective. So we'll go over a couple examples later, but I just really encourage you, if you are going to use video, make sure you're using it as that visual medium, as a way to, energize the learner, get them excited in an audiovisual manner. So any conversation about video wouldn't be complete without touching on accessibility. As mentioned, I have personal experience with accessibility, issues and tools. So I'm pretty well qualified to speak on this. And I do just want to share a couple do's and don'ts for accessibility. I think there's a myth that some people think video is not accessible. And I do just want to make sure that people know that it can be very accessible. There's a couple boxes that you do want to check off to make sure that all of your learners of all different abilities can access it. But as long as you're being careful and you're choosing videos with that in mind, I think it actually improves accessibility. So the first thing you'll want to do for accessibility is making sure that your videos are equipped with captions. Same language captions. Basically, if the video is in English, make sure the captions are in English and that they're high quality. There's a lot of AI-generated captions out there. And of course, AI has come a long way, and many of those can be very great solutions. But I would recommend just doing kind of a spot check to make sure that the captioning provider you're using is high quality. You may consider using audio descriptions. So for those of you not familiar, audio descriptions are basically a second audio track that can be used for folks who have visual impairments. So it might narrate what is important visually on the screen to users or to learners who are not able to view that visually. One thing I want to note about audio descriptions, and really anything about accessibility for visually impaired learners, is it's not just for those folks who can't necessarily see everything on the screen. It's also really helpful for students who maybe have a second job, maybe they have to drive Uber or something like that, but they also want to learn on the go. Or maybe they have children that they need to take care of, and they need to keep at least one eye on some kids running around rather than watching a video intently. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that accessibility is important for everybody and not necessarily just those with physical impairments. When it comes to language, I would also recommend looking into options for translated subtitles or even dubbing for videos. So especially if you do have a large population of English language learners, you'll want to consider how you can make those videos accessible for those learners who maybe aren't as fluent in English or just might absorb the language better if there was the translated subtitle or dubbing option.
It's interesting, that point as well, Natalie. We actually did a study here at Bowclips that we looked into those that were acquiring English as a second language and found that statistically it's easier to then learn new words, new vocabulary when you are watching a video versus audio, because you've got those visual references that help you kind of retain that information. It can actually support quite a lot of language acquisition.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've heard that as well. Like even just students acquiring or learners acquiring English as their first language, if they can watch English captions, they're able to improve their literacy as well.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to don'ts, I would, especially when it comes to sort of the is it accessible for visually impaired user question, I would say, like, if you can think, like, does this video work as a podcast? If you put it on your phone and flipped your phone over and did the dishes, would you still be able to follow along with the video? Then I couldn't say you could be pretty confident it's accessible video. But if you are interested in captions, audio descriptions, subtitles, etc., you will likely need to do a little bit of research just to make sure, like, the vendors you're using or the tools provided with, the vendor you're using, whether it be Boclips or YouTube or something, do meet your personal thresholds for accessibility. Okay, awesome. So now we're getting into the fun part, which is some examples of how to use video within your lessons, your classroom, your educational product, etc. So these are some of the, like I said, the best practices or best uses that I've seen across my customer base across the years at Boclips. So I've seen these use cases fall into roughly 3 different buckets. So one would be using video to engage learners. One would be using it to provide perspective for students. And then the third would be helping students think outside the screen, so to speak. So we'll run through a couple examples. I'll play about 20-30 seconds of a handful of videos so you can get a feel for what the videos look like. And you can also understand what the Boclips library looks like. So the first example I have for you is a very classic use of a video to engage learners in an audio-visual, really making most of videos an audio-visual medium. So this is a video from our content partner, Number Rock. So Number Rock does a really great job of providing video that is really engaging for elementary school students, preschool, etc., and teaches them fundamentals in math with songs.
If you put the number 1 into 10 parts, that's with a decimal place value. Start the values as the one. They're quite small, like 0.1, which is the decimal, y'all. This number as a fraction is 1/10, and 0.1 is its decimal equivalent. Fractions over 10, 100, 1000, and on. Or other similar numbers, it's a phenomenon. Decimals are fractions, just with different names. They each have a value that's exactly the same.
And I will have that song stuck in my head for the rest of time. Thank you for asking. Here's another example of how to engage learners. So this is a video from Financial Times, and I actually think this video is so interesting because I put myself back in the shoes of reading Shakespeare for the first time when I was in 10th, 11th grade, etc., and thinking how clunky all the words look together on the page, and it felt very difficult to get into. So if you have students that are in that same boat, really just listening to Shakespeare as it was originally intended to be heard, I think can go a long way. So I think using video as a way to showcase poetry, Shakespeare, etc., is such a fantastic method.
Ye elves of hills, brooks, standing lakes and groves, and ye who on the sands with printless foot do chase the ebbing Neptune, and to fly him when he comes back. You demi-puppets that by moonshine do the green sour ringlets make, whereof the ewe not bites, and you whose pastime is to make midnight mushrooms, that rejoice to hear the solemn curfew, by whose aid, weak masters though ye be.
Wonderful. And then one last example in this engage idea or concept. One of our most popular content partners is TED Ed, and they produce a lot of videos that are animations. We all know students love animations, and I think this is such a great use of the medium of animation to showcase history truly in a story format.
In the 1600s, the Dutch East India Company employed hundreds of ships to trade gold, porcelain, spices, and silks around the globe. But running this massive operation wasn't cheap. In order to fund their expensive voyages, the company turned to private citizens, individuals who could invest money to support the trip in exchange for a share of the ship's profits. This practice allowed the company to afford even grander voyages, increasing profits for both themselves and their savvy investors. Selling these shares.
Awesome. So moving on to sort of the second concept of how best to use video, I would recommend using it to provide perspective in a couple ways. So this first example I'll share with you is a way to use video to help students learn from experts directly. So we'll hear from our content partner, Dr. Tracy Marks, who, as she'll mention, is a psychiatrist and just a really great example of how students don't have to just read about psychiatry. They can hear from a psychiatrist.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. Today, I'm talking about how ADHD can affect how you think about yourself. What you think about yourself affects how you relate to others and shapes the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis. What I'm talking about is based on schema therapy. Think of schema therapy as a framework for how you see yourself. And this framework is built by your early life experience.
Another great way to provide additional perspective to students is to enable them to hear from diverse voices. So it's always a great idea to use video that shows people who look like your students, look like their families, look like their communities. Not always accessible, but video can make that a reality.
Hey, I'm Jory. At NASA, we pay tribute to the women in STEM who continue to lead the way for change in our society and culture. This March, we shine a spotlight, just a few, in honor of Women's History Month. Did you know?
In a similar vein, I think video is such a great way to help students just see the world, basically. So I'll share here a video from AFP TV, which does a really great job of showing students in a completely different pocket of the world that may be having the same similar issues that they're facing. I think it's such a great way to build empathy, like Jen was sharing earlier.
It's a sight you'd never expect to see in rural India. Women from all over Africa are learning how to be solar engineers. Most of these students are completely illiterate, but that's never been a barrier at Barefoot College. Asunta Achan went to school for only a year in her native South Sudan. But after 4 months here, she can rig up a solar lamp with her eyes closed. There are no textbooks or exams. She simply learns by doing.
I take solar in my mind, and I take more solar to go in my village. And I put is all the 3,000 people is taking the solar all.
Awesome. And again, in a similar vein, when it comes to immersing yourself in different cultures, I could think of no better way to use video than to use it in a language classroom. So instead of simply conjugating French verbs all day and night, you can actually watch French being spoken in Paris at the Eiffel Tower. How much more exciting is that?
Bonjour et bienvenue dans un nouvel épisode d'Easy French. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes dans le 10e arrondissement de Paris, un des nouveaux quartiers jeunes et branchés de la capitale, et nous allons demander aux Parisiens pourquoi est-ce qu'ils ont décidé d'emménager à Paris. On y va? Est-ce que vous habitez à Paris?
Awesome. And then lastly, in this bucket of providing perspective, one of the most creative uses of video is connecting learning objectives with real-world experiences. So I'll share a video here from Sky News around climate change. I think this would be so fantastic in maybe a course or a chapter about maybe weather patterns, even early concept of climate change. Actually connecting that with what did climate change do to people? What is it doing? What is it going to do? I think that will bring the text to life in that manner.
The climate is changing.
And according to government experts, the risk of more scenes like these are set to increase significantly. This was the flooding in Gloucester in 2007. 5 years on, we revisited the same street.
The river's at the back of the property and water. Yes, it goes right through here. It got up to about here. On our house, £40,000 worth for the damage. Across the road, £20,000 for the damage.
And you were covered by insurance.
I was, but
And moving on to our last concept of how best to use video, the concept of helping students think outside the screen. So when it comes to science experiments, they can be expensive to run in a classroom, certainly, but also, thinking about asynchronous or virtual students, almost impossible. So I think video can be a really great way of enabling students to still experience those, real life experiments without necessarily needing them to conduct them themselves. This is one of our favorite, more independent content partners called Physics Girl.
I made a video recently on one of the simplest but most mesmerizing phenomena I've ever discovered. You drag a plate through the water, creating two dips on the surface, and sunlight shining through the dips will create two crisp black spots on the bottom of the pool that can persist across the length of the pool. But the dips in the water are just the tip of the iceberg, as they say. Underneath the surface is an entire half-ring vortex, aka a toroidal vortex. I had never seen these before, so there's so much more to explore. And I know not everyone else has a pool, so I took some of your awesome suggestions and I'm going to try them out.
Awesome. And then ending on a fun one here, again, in the same vein of helping students think outside the screen, I think video can be such a great way to help students get physical, with physical education, art, music, etc. So here's a video from one of our eclectic content partners called Virtual Club. And we're actually going to learn how to break dance.
Hey, it's Adrian here. I'm going to be showing you a new move today. It's called the backspin. And now it's time to show you step by step. First thing, we're going to go low. We're going to start not from standing like I did, not until you learn all the movements, then you can start from standing.
Awesome. And I'm sure everyone is popping out to go practice their break dance right now. As this is our last video example, I do just want to stay on this screen for just a moment and show you all a little bit of a peek into the Bow Club's platform. You'll see here that you can see more information about any video you select, as well as discussion questions, learning objectives, etc., that we've created for each video. You'll also see recommended videos below. If you were to use Bowclips in the classroom, you could also share videos with students using shared codes, which we'll go over in a moment. So just as a refresher, if anyone wants to take a screenshot of this slide, we have 3 main ways to use videos in the classroom or in your learning product. That will be to engage learners, to provide perspective, and to help students think outside the screen. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think we all at this point know video is important and so great and so fantastic, but it can be difficult to find the right video. Videos online can be inaccurate, there can be ads, there could be promotional material, or maybe it is a fine video, but it's just not, necessarily curated for your state's learning objectives. Maybe it doesn't use exactly the right vocabulary, vernacular, etc. for your learners. So we know this can be very difficult for you all. That is what Bowclips tries to solve. We've put together a library of about 2.2 million videos. We have over 550 content partners, with new ones being added regularly. And our goal is to try to get all of the pain of acquiring video out of the way so that you all can focus on choosing from a safe a library and selecting the most engaging video for your students in that moment. What we do at Boclips is, as mentioned, we find the right video, we make sure it's accessible, it's distraction-free, no ads or anything like that. It's verified to be correct, and we also curate the video towards various curricula so that you all can select the curricula you're working with and go. Here are some of the curricula that we've aligned to, with more on the way. Some of the big names here would be Common Core for math and English, and NGSS science, as well as some various state curricula and international curricula. If you all are interested in taking Boclips out for a spin, as mentioned, you can get access to our library of 2 million video clips. You can share it with students directly in the classroom, or choose to embed it in a video in a learning product for long-term use. You can scan this QR code and it will bring you to our website to sign up. We do have a free pilot going on right now, so we'd love to welcome you in, collect feedback, and hear more about all the ways you're using video in the classroom.
Thanks, Natalie. That's fantastic.
Yay. Thank you.
I didn't even know we had breakdancing videos, so there we go. I feel like that's a deep dive.
The more you know.
Right, exactly. I'm excited. We did get a few questions. So I wonder, let me see, where should we start? I guess a question here that it depends a little bit on students' learning issues, but for narrative videos, for example, like history, do we recommend watching the entire video and then maybe returning back to certain points to review the meaning in the material, or just stop the video as it's first shown? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but I mean, I think my answer to that one would be a little bit of both, actually. And I think, the idea that you could watch a summary and then go back to key points, I think is really useful. One thing that I used to like to do with students was have a kind of playlist of videos. You can create playlists on the Boclips platform, is to have a playlist of videos that are relevant to the whole kind of, semester, or the whole, certain topic that we might be learning for a few weeks, and have that really as a bank of supplementary resources that students can keep going back to, either to revise what they've learned or to introduce topics. And they can kind of, I think it's important to have those sorts of videos, not just to deliver the lesson in on itself, but also to add all of that great context and those kind of deep dives into other parts of learning that you might not have thought of as well. So, and hopefully you can find some of those pathways and suggestions on our platform too. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Natalie.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what you said about creating that sort of supplementary resource that they can always jump back to. I think when it comes to a very specific lesson, I would always opt for shorter. So maybe just splitting that video into 2 or 3 parts, and maybe you want them to watch the first 1 minute, 2 minutes, and having a question about that 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then sort of moving on throughout the video. I think students can just get really overwhelmed by a lot of information at once. And, if you get a question at the end of a 10-minute video that was about something answered in minute 1, I could just see there's a lot of room to go off course there. So I would try to remove that and just have the questions more interspersed during what it's actually happening in the video.
Absolutely. I think you can sort of stop the video and use that as a jumping off point for questions to students as well, and bring their attention to certain things that might come up in the video a little bit more that way. Okay, and we've got another question. Can video be used to facilitate interactivity in the classroom, like group work or other collaboration?
I think so. I mean, I think it's a great tool for asynchronous learning, but if you're doing synchronous, absolutely. I think maybe you could use it if you're a teacher to sort of almost have a second teacher in the room. So maybe you as the live instructor, you can go around and correct students, maybe if they've gone off off the beaten path or if they've misunderstood, while the video itself can actually be, instructing them what to do. So maybe if you're thinking like an art project or something like that, where it's sort of step by step, do this, then do that. I think that could be a really great way to facilitate collaboration. You could also have where, maybe in like a group, maybe one student at the table is in charge of the video and they get to press play and pause, and the other one is in charge of taking notes, and maybe a third one is in charge of thinking of questions to ask the teacher or something like that. There's a lot of ways to integrate collaboration.
Totally, I think it's a great jumping off point, and there's so many skills involved in that students are developing all the time as well. So being able to follow step-by-step instructions, for example, for a science experiment or one of the breakdancing, and being able to take it step by step and break it down is a skill in itself. And then, obviously you can do that as a group. I think you can even follow that on as well by asking students to respond to the video together in some way. So that could even be making their own video, instructional video, where they practice their informative and instructional writing by also trying to teach through that video new breakdancing moves that they've just invented. Or it could be something like one of those news clips that you just shared, Natalie. If there's an interesting person that might be being interviewed or who's talking, encouraging students to work together to come up with questions that they might like to ask that person, and segueing into some kind of like creative imagination role-playing type scenario for any topic that you're teaching.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's super fun.
Yeah, and I guess oh, there's one more question. It makes sense that video helps to engage students. So do you think it can help support lots of different learning styles?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great way to engage students who are more visual. Maybe sitting down and listening to a lecture isn't doing it for them, and they want to see, the words written out. I think we saw that, especially the first video I showed, the Number Rock video, where they kind of, sing a song, but they're also showing visually, what words are being spoken, and they showed the little bricks of tens being added up. And then any other video as well, like we were talking about before, just adding the English captions is a way to visualize the information as well. So I think it's great for visual learners. I think tactile learners as well. Like if you're sharing the video with students in the classroom, just feeling that like onus, like you get to press play, you get to rewind, you get to turn the captions on or off. Honestly, I think it makes you more in the driver's seat for education. Would you add anything to that, Jen?
No, totally. I think so. And I think in some ways it can, as an ex-tired teacher, it can actually inspire a little bit of creativity around some of these things. Like definitely, watching certain videos, imagining, let's copy that experiment that I hadn't thought of that might illustrate that point really well, and turn this into a kinesthetic activity as well. Or, perhaps like say some of the music, kind of sing along. I think we even have some karaoke videos for English language learning. There's like a sing along element to that. And definitely include that activity with it. The visual part of it is really important as well, and being able to see diagrams and see those real life examples. I think that is where it comes into its own a lot of the time. And in terms of listening skills, I think that for English language learning and for language acquisition generally, being able to really listen to different accents, different people, pronouncing words certain ways, or being able to listen to, famous speeches from history, things like this. When you're talking about public speaking, that really adds an extra level of kind of context that I think is quite hard for just one teacher to recreate in the classroom as well.
Absolutely. I think one of our best sellers of all time is the Greta Thunberg TED Talk around climate change. I think that's such a fantastic video. I mean, you could think of it two ways, right? You could show it in a science class about climate change. I also think it'd be a great video just for English language learners. Like you said, just hearing, famous speeches or just people speaking, maybe public speaking is more clear than people talking on the street. So it could be a really great way to learn English better.
Totally. And, we have videos on our platform going back to, I think the oldest one is 1913. So, so you can watch, Roosevelt's speeches, Martin Luther King, things like this. So also in terms of thinking about history lessons, it's a great way to really put some of those moments in history in context, using some of that archive footage. I guess that's my last question to you, Natalie, is, and this might be a little bit of a difficult one, but what would you say your favorite channel or video is at Voclips?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I can give you a moment to think about it and share mine if that's
yeah.
I guess I actually really love this really niche one, but there's a guy called Rob Words who he's actually a journalist and he works in some quite well-known newspapers over here in the UK, but he's built a whole load of videos all about the history of the English language and linguistics. And I mean, a lot of them is just him talking to the camera, but he visits certain places and he kind of contextualizes it a little bit with some of that extra history, but just the way that he brings to life kind of a little bit of a, possibly quite dull subject about linguistics. He just turns it into these really exciting stories about, in the medieval period, it was like this and they pronounce things like this, and you can see it in, these place names now, things like that. And I think he's really good at just showing how passionate he is for his subject. And it kind of gets me really passionate about a subject I might not have really thought about before. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the sweet spot of our library, really just content producers who are so passionate about their subject, but also have fun with it, it's video, come on, let's have fun. I think, and my favorite content partner, I think is exactly the same way. So there's one called Useful Charts, and some of their more academic ones, they'll do charts and lineages around maybe the royal monarchy in England, or maybe the succession to be president in the US, God forbid if the president were to not be able to perform his duties, etc., who takes on the presidency in that instance. But then he also has the funniest ones. He has it for the line of succession or something for Star Wars. And, Harry Potter, who takes on Dumbledore's position. And it's just so much fun. And it's just such a great way to use an academic method to also just learn about the world around you and the things that students are interested in themselves.
Totally. And as an educator, it really would spark my creativity about how I could not necessarily just deliver the same lesson I've been delivering for years, and actually think about shaking it up a bit and making it more relevant or more interesting. So yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone who's joined us for your time today. We are going to be following up shortly with some more information about how you can take a look at our videos here at Voclips, and some key takeaways as well on how to maximize videos in your learning experiences. But please don't hesitate to get in touch with us if you have any follow-up questions or thoughts. We're always really happy to hear from you. And thanks for joining us today, and thanks, Natalie.
Of course. Yeah, thank you, Jen, and thank you everyone for joining. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.